Before you continue reading, heaven asks you to prepare your heart for a truth that may be difficult to hear. What is about to be revealed is not meant to hurt you. It is not meant to frighten you or cause you to question everything you have been through. It is meant to help you understand what has been happening behind the scenes of your connection. It is meant to shine a light on a reality that your special person has been hiding from the world and, most painfully, from themselves. Your special person doesn't want to see your face anymore. At least, that is what they keep telling themselves. That is the story they rehearse every morning when they wake up and every night before they fall into restless sleep. They tell themselves they are done. They tell themselves they have moved on. They tell themselves that the chapter between you and them has finally closed forever. They say it with conviction. They say it with certainty. They say it as though repeating it enough times will somehow make it true. Yet every time they try to walk away, something pulls them back into thoughts of you. Every time they convince themselves that they are finally free, your memory rises like a tide they cannot hold back. A song plays that reminds them of you. A place appears that carries the echo of your laughter. A stranger passes by wearing the same expression you used to wear when you were lost in thought. And suddenly, without warning, they are right back where they started, standing in the middle of their own lie, unable to move forward, unable to go back. And the reason may shock you. They are heartbroken after finding out that you are not who they thought you were. For a long time, they believed they understood you. They believed they had you figured out completely. They placed you into a box that made sense to them, a box that was comfortable, a box that allowed them to predict your behavior and control the rhythm of the connection. They thought they knew your limits. They thought they knew your weaknesses. They thought they knew exactly how much you needed them and exactly how far they could push before you would bend but never break. They built an entire understanding of you based on assumptions. They created a version of you in their mind that served their narrative, a version that would always be available, always be forgiving, always be willing to accept less than you deserved. But heaven says they were wrong. Deeply and profoundly wrong. The truth that has shattered them is this. You are capable of walking away forever. Not in the way they feared during arguments. Not in the temporary, emotional way that ends with reconciliation and repeated patterns. But truly walking away. Releasing them from your heart. Letting go of the need for closure. Choosing yourself with a quiet finality that carries no anger, no resentment, no desperation. This realization hit them harder than anything else. Harder than any disagreement. Harder than any silence. Harder than any distance that has ever stretched between you. Because this is not something they can fix with charm or timing or carefully chosen words. This is something that has shifted at the deepest level of your being, and they can feel it in a way that terrifies them. They never expected you to reach a point where you would choose yourself over chasing them. They never imagined you would stop begging for understanding. They never imagined you would stop explaining your heart to someone who refused to listen. They never imagined you would become strong enough to release what no longer serves your highest good. In their mind, your love for them was permanent, unchangeable, woven so deeply into your identity that it could never be removed. And now they cannot stop thinking about it. The thought follows them everywhere. It sits with them during quiet moments. It interrupts their concentration during busy hours. It creeps into their dreams and turns peaceful nights into restless ones. They cannot escape the growing awareness that something fundamental has changed, and that change did not come from them. It came from you. Their heart is carrying a strange mixture of emotions that they do not fully understand. Part of them is angry. Angry at you for daring to evolve without their permission. Angry at the universe for shifting the dynamic they relied upon. Angry at themselves for not recognizing what was happening sooner. Part of them is confused. Confused because the version of you they constructed in their mind no longer matches the version of you that exists in reality. They do not know how to interact with this new you. They do not know how to approach someone who no longer needs their validation to feel whole. And part of them is deeply afraid. Afraid of the silence that comes when someone stops reaching out. Afraid of the emptiness that fills the space where your energy used to be. Afraid of the possibility that the door they always assumed would remain open has finally begun to close. But beneath all of that, beneath the anger and the confusion and the fear, is a pain they refuse to admit. A pain so raw and so honest that acknowledging it would require them to dismantle every wall they have ever built. The pain of realizing they may actually lose you, not as a possibility, not as a distant hypothetical, but as an approaching reality that grows closer with every passing day. Heaven says your special person spent a long time believing you would always be there, no matter how distant they became, no matter how cold they acted, no matter how many mixed signals they sent, no matter how many times they chose their own comfort over your emotional needs. They believed you would remain. They believed your love was guaranteed. They believed that no matter what they did or failed to do, you would be standing in the same place, holding the same space, carrying the same hope. Now they are discovering that nothing in life is guaranteed. Not love, not patience, not the presence of someone who once gave everything. And that discovery has broken something inside them. Something they cannot repair with logic. Something they cannot numb with distraction. Something that sits in the center of their chest and aches in ways they have never experienced before. What they never told you, what they could barely admit to themselves, is that your presence became a comfort they relied upon more than they ever showed. Even during periods of silence when it seemed as though they had forgotten you existed, they had not. Even during moments of separation when it appeared they were thriving without you, part of them was drawing strength from the knowledge that you were still there. Knowing you cared about them gave them a security they could not find anywhere else. Knowing you were still emotionally available gave them a confidence that sustained them through their most uncertain moments. Knowing you still held space for them in your heart made them feel protected in a world that often felt unpredictable and cold. They used your love as an anchor even while pretending they did not need it. They leaned on your energy even while pushing you away. They found comfort in your consistency even while offering you nothing consistent in return. But heaven says that energy has changed, quietly, gradually, and irreversibly. Something inside you has shifted, and they feel it. They feel it the way you feel a season changing before the first leaf falls. They feel it in the subtle difference in your words, in the way your energy no longer reaches for them with the same urgency, in the way your silence now carries peace instead of longing. You have changed. Whether you realize it or not, you have begun reclaiming pieces of yourself that were once handed over to this connection. Pieces of your identity that became entangled with their approval. Pieces of your confidence that were tied to their attention. Pieces of your joy that depended on their participation. One by one, you have been gathering those pieces back, placing them where they belong, restoring yourself to a wholeness that does not require anyone else to complete. You have started seeing your own value, not through someone else's eyes, not through the reflection of someone else's affection, but through your own clear, honest, unwavering gaze. You have started recognizing your own power, the power to choose, the power to release, the power to walk in a direction that honors your spirit even if it means walking alone. You have started understanding that your future does not depend on anyone else's choices, that your happiness is not a hostage to be held by someone who cannot decide whether they want to stay or go, that your peace is sacred and non-negotiable, and this transformation is impossible for them to ignore. No matter how hard they try to pretend it does not affect them, it does. No matter how many times they tell themselves they do not care, they care more than they have ever cared about anything. Every day they sense it. A quiet withdrawal of an energy that once surrounded them like warmth. Every day they feel the distance growing. Not a physical distance, but something deeper, something spiritual, something that cannot be bridged with a simple message or a sudden reappearance. Every day they wonder if they waited too long. If the time they spent taking you for granted has finally cost them the one thing they never thought they could lose. And this transformation is impossible for them to ignore. No matter how hard they try to pretend it does not affect them, it does. No matter how many times they tell themselves they do not care, they care more than they have ever cared about anything. Every day they sense it. A quiet withdrawal of an energy that once surrounded them like warmth. Every day they feel the distance growing. Not a physical distance, but something deeper, something spiritual, something that cannot be bridged with a simple message or a sudden reappearance. Every day they wonder if they waited too long, if the time they spent taking you for granted has finally cost them the one thing they never thought they could lose. Heaven wants you to understand something important about what is happening inside them. Their heartbreak is not simply about losing a relationship. It is not simply about missing your company or feeling nostalgic about shared memories. Their heartbreak comes from realizing they misjudged you at the most fundamental level. They assumed your love meant weakness. They looked at the way you gave, the way you forgave, the way you continued showing up even after being hurt, and they interpreted it as fragility. They assumed your patience meant dependence. They saw how long you were willing to wait, how much you were willing to endure, and they mistook it for an inability to survive without them. They assumed your forgiveness meant unlimited tolerance. They believed that because you had forgiven before, you would forgive forever. That there was no boundary you would enforce. That there was no line they could cross that would finally be the last. Now they are discovering the truth, and the truth is devastating to everything they believed. Your love was never weakness. It was the most courageous thing you ever offered. Loving someone who could not fully love you back required a strength that most people will never understand. Your patience was never dependence. It was a choice. A deliberate, conscious choice to give someone the time and space to grow, even when that patience was not reciprocated. Your forgiveness was never permission to take you for granted. It was grace. And grace, by its very nature, is given freely but never owed endlessly. And that truth is forcing them to confront parts of themselves they have avoided for a very long time. Parts that are selfish. Parts that are afraid of real intimacy. Parts that sabotage the very things they claim to want. Parts that hide behind indifference because vulnerability feels too dangerous. There are moments when they replay old conversations in their mind, hearing your words with new ears, understanding meanings they missed the first time. There are moments when they remember things you said that seemed insignificant at the time but now carry a weight that stops them in their tracks. There are moments when they suddenly understand your perspective in ways they never could before, when they see themselves through your eyes and feel shame at what they find. And every realization feels like another piece of their heart breaking, because hindsight has become their teacher, and hindsight is the cruelest instructor of all. It shows you everything clearly but only after it is too late to change what happened. They can finally see what they could not see before. They can finally appreciate things they once overlooked. The way you remembered small details. The way you showed up even when it was inconvenient. The way you believed in them even when they gave you no reason to. The way you held on when most people would have let go. They can finally recognize your worth. But heaven says recognition often arrives after opportunities have already begun slipping away. It arrives in the quiet aftermath of loss, when the absence of something reveals its true value. This is why your energy feels different to them. You are no longer standing in the same place emotionally. You have moved, not away from love, but toward yourself. You are no longer waiting for permission to live your life. You are no longer putting your dreams on hold while someone else decides whether you are worth choosing. You are no longer defining your happiness through someone else's actions or measuring your worth by someone else's willingness to stay. And whether they admit it or not, they are terrified by that reality. They are terrified because for the first time, they understand that you might actually mean goodbye. Not as a threat designed to provoke a reaction. Not as manipulation intended to pull them closer through fear. Not as a temporary reaction to pain that will fade once emotions settle, but as a genuine decision. A clear, grounded, peaceful decision made from a place of self-love rather than self-destruction. And that possibility haunts them in ways they cannot articulate. Heaven says there is another truth hidden beneath their heartbreak, one that they guard more carefully than any other. You have become their biggest regret and their deepest desire at the same time. These two things exist within them simultaneously, pulling them in opposite directions, leaving them paralyzed. The regret comes from what they failed to appreciate when appreciation would have mattered. It comes from chances they wasted because they assumed more chances would always come. It comes from moments they handled poorly, moments when they chose pride over honesty, moments when they withheld love to maintain control, moments when they walked away knowing you needed them to stay. It comes from words they never said, words of gratitude, words of admiration, words of commitment, words that sat on the edge of their tongue but never crossed their lips because saying them would have meant surrendering the power they thought they needed. But the desire comes from realizing what you truly are, not the version of you they invented, not the version that fit neatly into their expectations, but the real you, the version that loves deeply and fiercely, the version that carries wounds but refuses to become bitter, the version that falls but always finds a way to stand again. You are someone rare. You are someone who loved sincerely in a world that often rewards pretending. You are someone who gave more than most people would have given in the same circumstances. You are someone who continued believing in the goodness of a connection even when evidence suggested you should stop believing. You are someone who carried hope like a flame through the darkest parts of this journey and never let it go out completely. Now they see it. Now they understand it with a clarity that feels like fire. Now they crave the very energy they once took for granted, the very presence they once pushed away, the very love they once treated as ordinary. Yet heaven says timing has become their greatest challenge, because while they are finally waking up to the truth of who you are waking up to your own worth. While they are finally seeing your value, you are finally seeing it too. And that changes everything. That changes the entire landscape of this connection. Because the person who once would have accepted breadcrumbs now demands the whole table. The person who once would have waited forever now understands that forever is too long to spend waiting for someone who cannot decide. There is a powerful shift occurring in your spiritual journey right now. A shift from chasing to attracting. From pouring your energy outward in desperate pursuit to drawing the right things toward you through the quiet magnetism of self-worth. A shift from waiting to becoming. From standing still in hope that someone else will determine your destiny to actively stepping into the fullness of who you were always meant to be. A shift from seeking validation to recognizing your own divine value. From needing someone else to confirm that you are enough to knowing it so deeply within yourself that no external voice could ever shake that knowing. Your special person feels this shift even if they cannot explain it. Something inside them knows you are no longer the same version of yourself that they remember. Something inside them knows that the old dynamics, the push and pull, the hot and cold, the taking without giving, cannot continue. Something inside them knows that if they do not face the truth of what they feel, if they do not summon the courage to be honest with themselves and with you, they may lose access to this connection forever. Not because you are punishing them, not because you are seeking revenge, but because you have simply outgrown the space where suffering felt normal. Heaven says do not allow this message to fill your heart with fear. Do not let it pull you backward into patterns of worry or waiting or wondering. Instead, allow it to fill your heart with understanding. Allow it to bring you peace in the knowledge that your journey has not been wasted. Every tear you shed watered something within you that is now blooming. Every moment of patience built a strength that is now unshakable. Every act of love, even the ones that were never returned, planted seeds in your spirit that are now bearing fruit. Their heartbreak is not proof that you did something wrong. Their heartbreak is not evidence that you loved too much or held on too long or gave more than you should have. Their heartbreak is the result of a truth finally coming into the light. A truth that was always there but that they refused to see until the consequences of their blindness became impossible to ignore. The truth that you are stronger than they believed, stronger than they wanted you to be, stronger than the version of you that served their comfort. The truth that you know your worth, that you have stopped accepting less than you deserve, that you have drawn a line in the sand that no amount of charm or nostalgia or empty promises can erase. The truth that you are capable of walking away from anything that dishonors your spirit, no matter how deeply you once loved it, no matter how much history you share, no matter how painful the release feels in the moment of letting go. And most importantly, the truth that you are not who they thought you were. You are not the person who would wait forever. You are not the person who would crumble without their love. You are not the person who would sacrifice every piece of themselves just to keep someone who was never fully committed. You are far more powerful than that. You are far more resilient than that. You are far more worthy than the treatment you accepted. And whether they choose to admit it today, tomorrow, or months from now, that realization is changing everything inside them. It is dismantling the illusions they built. It is tearing down the walls they hid behind. It is forcing them to look at themselves honestly, perhaps for the first time, and ask whether they are truly prepared to become the kind of person who deserves what you have to offer. Heaven sees you. Heaven honors you. And heaven wants you to know that this moment, this precise moment of transformation, is exactly where you are meant to be.